Vauxhall is the leader in the fleet market. And it's a fact that we provide more cars for British business than most of our competitors put together. We have a wider range of cars than any other car manufacturer, and a wider range of fleet services to back up those cars. So when Vauxhall makes changes to its #1 selling car, that's an important piece of news for fleet operators. And this is the new 1993 Vauxhall Cavalier. The new Cavalier may look very similar to last year's model, but there's over 100 significant changes. Some obvious, and some concealed under the skin. It's developing not by revolution, but through evolution. Cavalier is the UK's #1 fleet car, and that's largely because it's got the lowest whole life cost in its class and has great driver appeal. The new Cavalier has both these qualities, plus important new safety features and a new engine lineup. So this is a very important car for us here at Luton. We believe the new Cavalier will retain Vauxhall's #1 position in fleet. But to find out whether others agree, I'm going to hand over to someone who knows more than most about what marks a genuinely good car from the also-rans. So let's go over to our proving ground at Millbrook and William Woolard.
Before we start, let's have a quick walk round this car you've waited so long to see. And as you can see, perhaps indeed with some relief, there have been no radical or overall changes in design. There are, however, some important modifications. At the front end, for example, the key differences are the redesigned grille, obviously one of the most important parts of a car's character and styling. They've refashioned the headlamps, and all the new Cavaliers will carry these smart new colour-matched bumper units. Down the side, well, they've added these trims to give greater protection against all those irritating knocks and bumps we get these days in car parks. At the back end, again, they've refashioned the light cluster. There's a slight restyling of the boot outline, and again, that prominent Griffin badging. And as far as looks are concerned, that really is about as far as it goes. In terms of lineup, Cavalier now comes into line with Astra, so we've got the Envoy, the L becomes the LS, and the GL becomes the GLS. What about the engines, I hear you say? Well, there's some significant realignments under the bonnet. For a start, we've got two 1.7 diesels, one normally aspirated, one turbo to tap the growing diesel market. At the bottom end of the petrol range, we've got a 1.6 low-end torque engine, lots of urge low down, plus a 1.8 petrol injection engine, both identically priced, so clearly there's a real choice for you now in this critically important mainstream fleet area. 3 2-litre engines, injection, 16-valve, and a very lively turbo number. And at the top end, to round the whole thing off, the new 2.5-litre V6 engine. So 8 engines in total, 32 cars in the lineup, and obviously one of Cavalier's great strengths has always been this huge breadth of choice, something there for everybody. And they all carry, of course, the catalytic converter, so it's a newer, greener Cavalier, if you like. What about inside the cockpit? Well, they've tightened up one or two details, but undoubtedly the big story is the new trim range and some important safety features. I have to say the new trim range is very classy indeed, very upmarket, you might say. The safety features, well, hefty side impact bars in the doors, seatbelt tensioners that automatically and instantly tighten the seatbelt around the body in the case of a front-end impact. And I'm very pleased to say that Vauxhall will be offering airbags in the Cavalier range from next spring. So a very big step forward, you might say, in safety terms. But always the big claim for Cavalier has been greater driver appeal. So how does the new Cavalier stack up in terms of drivability? Well, let's kick off with a run on the hill climb to warm this engine up a bit. And I must say all this rain about adds to the flavour of the test. It's a common ploy, of course, on tests like this for the manufacturer to fit you up with an all-singing, all-dancing top-of-the-range model. But I've deliberately chosen a mid-range car. What's more, a diesel at that. This is the 1.7 Turbo D. And if recent figures are anything to go by, this is certainly a car whose time has come in the fleet market. Well, there's no doubt this This diesel really has a great deal going for it. It's a cracking little engine. In fact, after the first couple of minutes of what you might call rattling warm-up, I challenge most drivers to tell the difference in performance between this and a petrol engine. The power comes on just as smoothly. There's plenty of urge at the bottom end, of course, and provided you use the gearbox, as you have to do in this sort of terrain, there's plenty of acceleration when you need it. What's more, it's quiet, in fact, very quiet for a diesel. But for my money, the most important factor undoubtedly in the new Cavalier story is the quality of the overall package. I mean, the build quality, the fit and finish is absolutely first class. These new interiors look, well, they're very good looking, very stylish indeed with the new trim lines. And the specification is even more competitive now they've added power steering across the range, so the wife can give up those weight training courses, and they've thrown in central locking and deadlocks all round for good measure. As for ride and drivability, well, I think this car is really just about viceless. I mean, apart from this road test, I've also had it on the motorways and down the country lanes, and it really does give you a smooth and comfortable ride. It's not, of course, a razzle-dazzle sports car, that's for sure. But it is a real pleasure to drive. We all know how important a factor that is. Well, I'm now in the 2-litre 4x4 turbo on the speedboat, as you can see. And that quality, of course, driver appeal has always been something that has given the Cavalier the edge. It's been something that Vauxhall have tried very, very hard indeed to retain. And you can see it par excellence in this car. A very lively number indeed. Here we are doing well over 100 on the speedboat, and it's all absolutely effortless. I have to say I really enjoyed that. But I'm sure the competition are really going to hate the new Cavalier precisely because it is such a good all-round package. But let's get a response now from someone who's much closer than I am to the current vibes in the fleet market, Mike Gunnell of Fleet News. Mike, what's the most important factor about the new Cavalier as far as the fleet operator is concerned?
Certainly whole life costs are the most important factor these days. What you can buy the car for, what it costs you to run it over a typical replacement cycle of, say, 3 years, and what you can achieve on resale. That has to be the most important factor in efficient fleet running these days.
Can you put some actual figures on that?
Yes, for example, a 1.8 L Cavalier would cost somewhere in the region of 16 pence per mile to run over 3 years and 60,000 miles. That compares with an equivalent Sierra at around about 18.5p. Those are major differences for fleet operators.
And how important in that overall picture is general running reliability?
Reliability is very much part of whole life costs, and the cars with the best whole life cost performance are generally going to be the most reliable. Let me give you, for example, a fleet operator I know in West London runs 1,200 cars, of which 800 are Vauxhalls. He told me that all he had to do was to buy them, to service them regularly, and to sell them. And they gave him a totally hassle-free life.
Every operator wants a hassle-free life. Mike, how important in your view is the engine lineup for the new Cavalier? Is it significant for the fleet operator or insignificant?
I think there are some significant changes. I think the price realignment on the 1.8 and 1.6 engines will be of importance to some fleet operators. Whether the V6 or the 2-litre turbo are as important, I think, still remains to be seen. But where Vauxhall has scored, and I think will score in the future, is with its diesel lineup. In August, for example, fleets bought around 16,000 diesel cars. That's 100% more than they bought a year ago. And Vauxhall took a 12% share of that market, 300% better than they did in August 1991. I think a lot of fleet operators will be concentrating on those figures.
Mike, thank you. Well, I think you'll agree that's a fair measure of approval. But when it comes down to it, you know, it's not road testers and journalists like Mike and myself whom Vauxhall have got to impress. It's you guys who are in the driving seat. You have to pay the bottom line. So let's get a reaction from someone who really knows what's going on in the industry, Stewart White. Stewart, the fleet operator's been through a pretty rough time over the past couple of years, hasn't he?
I think you could say that. Most fleet managers have faced the situations where budgets have been cut. They've had to run vehicles on for longer, generally produce more with less. There have been external factors too. There have been the taxation changes proposed, environmental issues. All in all, a pretty tough time.
How well do you think Vauxhall have addressed these real changes in the marketplace with the new Cavalier range?
From what I've seen of the new range, I think they certainly have addressed these issues. The main point to make, obviously, is that the model comes from a very good pedigree. ACFO fleet managers have voted the Cavalier range their fleet car of the year for 7 years out of the past 8. That is because it addresses their issues. It offers good whole life running costs. There's a very good depth of range, and of course they get a good service from the whole dealer network and Vauxhall Motors themselves.
You mentioned servicing there, Stewart. How important do you rate these non-car elements like servicing in the overall package?
Oh, they're absolutely critical in fleet operation. You can buy a car at any kind of discount, that's not difficult, but running the car properly, running a fleet of cars over a period of time, does need external support, and Vauxhall do listen. Their dealers are generally above average.
One final point, Stewart, about the new 2.5 litre V6 engine. Is it irrelevant, do you think, in the fleet car operation, or does it have a role to play?
It has a role to play, although I don't think many companies will run it as the pool car for the head office. But for many senior and middle executives, it could be an ideal car for long-distance business travel. I think the fuel consumption figures offer good, relaxed journey times without any loss of fuel consumption.
Stewart, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So how can we pull that lot together? Well, I think Vauxhall have adopted a very canny strategy indeed. They've certainly kept a weather eye firmly on the opposition to make sure that no one steals a march on them. But what they've really done is to change just enough about the Cavalier to keep it out in front, but not too much to risk breaking a winning streak. So they've kept all the old Cavalier strengths and added a parcel of new ones, you might say, to keep the customers happy, like, for example, this huge range of engine options. What's more, they've hung on to this all-important driver appeal. Now, I don't know about you, but that certainly seems to me to add up very much to a winning formula.